$50,000. That was the price Emily Carter's mother put on her first night. Emily had always believed New York was the place where dreams came true. She never imagined that the same city could crush them in a heartbeat. On a freezing November night, she stood outside a neon-lit club in Brooklyn, wearing her only black dress, borrowed from her roommate, and an old coat far too thin for the icy wind that tangled her hair and stung her eyes. She kept replaying her mother's words. "If you really love your brother, you'll do this. Ethan needs surgery. Do you want him to die?" Her mother's voice had always cut through her hope like a knife, sharp and final. So here she was, 21 years old, violin major at NYU, waiting to sell something she had promised herself she would never lose like this. She gripped her purse tighter. It was empty except for an ID she wished she could hide. The back door swung open and a man appeared. Mason Black, tall with shoulders that filled the doorway, smiled at her, but his eyes stayed cold and blank. He did not look at her face for long. He stepped aside and gestured her in. Inside, the club was dark and pulsing with bass that vibrated through the floors. Emily smelled expensive cologne mixed with cheap perfume and stale liquor. Mason led her past velvet curtains to a private lounge with dim blue lights. A leather couch sat against the wall, and a low table held a folder and a glass of whiskey. "Sit down, Emily." Mason spoke her name as if it belonged to him. "Sign this first." She perched at the edge of the couch, hands on her knees. She tried to read the paper, but the words blurred under the flickering light. "Insurance," Mason said when she asked what it was. "Just a little protection for everyone. You sign, you get paid, your family gets what it needs. Simple." He pushed the pen into her hand. She could not stop her fingers from shaking. Her chest felt tight, as if someone was pressing down with all their weight. She swallowed hard. "What if I don't?" Her voice came out as a whisper, drowned by the low beat of the music outside. Mason laughed, leaned forward until she smelled stale coffee on his breath. "Sweetheart, you don't have a choice. Your mother already spent the money, your brother's hospital bills are waiting. Tonight, you belong to us." She bit the inside of her cheek to keep the tears in. The bass rattled the walls like a second heartbeat. Ethan's face flashed in her mind, pale and hooked up to machines, still trying to smile at her the last time she visited him. She lowered her head. Her mother had left her no way out. Her pen hovered above the signature line. She wished she could make her hand move, but her body refused to obey. The door swung open with a low creak. The man who stepped inside did not fit the smell or the shadows of this club. He wore a dark tailored suit, hair perfectly in place, eyes sharper than the cold wind outside. Even Mason straightened up. Alexander Reed said nothing at first. His eyes found Emily and paused, unreadable, then drifted to Mason and the folder. He picked it up with 2 fingers as if it might stain him. "What is this?" Alexander's voice was low, but Emily felt the hairs on her arms rise. Mason cleared his throat, his grin returning too quickly. "Nothing illegal, Mr. Reed. A simple arrangement. She knows why she's here. 50 grand for the night." Alexander looked at Emily again. "Did you agree to this?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just shook her head. Alexander put the folder down slowly, as if making a decision. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. "One night," he said, voice steady as stone. 100,000. Double your price. She leaves with me, now." Mason's eyes widened, but the grin stayed. "Of course, Mr. Reed, anything for you." Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. She felt small in that chair, one signature away from disappearing into this club forever. Then Alexander extended his hand. "Come with me if you want out." His palm was steady, his eyes still cold, but somehow safer than the room she sat in. Somewhere deep in her chest, a tiny hope stirred. Maybe she was not just a price tag tonight. Maybe she could still choose. Emily took his hand and felt the warmth of his skin against hers. Her heart stuttered when he pulled her to her feet. She did not know his name, why he cared, or what he wanted next, but for the first time all night, Emily felt her breath come back. She walked past Mason, past the door, past the paper she did not sign, holding tight to the only chance she had left. Emily Carter sat silently in the back seat of a sleek black car as it cut through the freezing New York streets. She kept her hands clasped tight in her lap, her thin coat pulled close around her shoulders even though the heater was on. Streetlights streaked past the tinted windows, but she could barely see them through the blur of her own thoughts. She tried to focus on the man sitting beside her, but every time she looked at him, her mind froze. Alexander Reed was a name she had heard before, though never from anyone she knew directly. People whispered about him at NYU, the mysterious billionaire who owned half the towers downtown, the kind of man who could buy a building before breakfast and have it torn down by lunch. He did not look at her as the car moved past the traffic. His phone rested in his hand, but he did not glance at it either. He simply stared straight ahead, sharp jawline lit faintly by the dashboard glow. Emily wondered why a man like him had stepped into that club in Brooklyn at all. She had never stepped into a place like that before tonight, and she never wanted to again. Her mind flashed back to Mason's smirk, the papers, her mother's cold voice telling her over the phone just hours ago that this was her duty as a sister. She swallowed hard and forced herself to look away from Alexander. She pressed her forehead to the cold window. Ethan's face rose in her mind. 15 years old, thin and pale from the heart defect he had been born with. Ethan had always been the center of her mother's world. She loved him too, but sometimes the weight of that love felt like a noose around her neck. Her father had died when she was 12, a construction accident no one in the company wanted to take responsibility for. The insurance money was gone within 2 years, lost to medical bills and her mother's gambling debts that Emily only learned about when debt collectors knocked on their tiny apartment door. She had won a scholarship to NYU through music. Her violin had been her only escape. Now that one hope had dragged her straight back into the same darkness she thought she had left behind. The car slowed. Alexander's deep voice broke her thoughts. "We are here." Emily lifted her head. They were no longer surrounded by clubs and street food trucks. The car had stopped in front of a modern glass building that stretched toward the sky, the letters Reed Holdings glowing in silver above the entrance. She hesitated when the driver opened her door. She looked at Alexander, but he did not wait for her question. "Come up." His tone left no room for refusal. Inside the building, the marble floors gleamed under warm golden lights. Emily felt small next to the tall glass walls and the echo of her footsteps as she followed Alexander toward a private elevator. She stared at her reflection in the metal doors, at her wind-blown hair and cheap coat next to his sharp suit. She wanted to ask where they were going, but when she turned to him, his eyes pinned her in place. "I am not in the habit of picking up strays." His voice was quiet but clear. Emily's chest tightened. "I did not ask you to," she whispered. A flicker of something crossed his face, gone before she could read it. The elevator opened into a penthouse that looked nothing like any place she had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city skyline. The living room was all clean lines and dark leather, a fireplace burning low on one side. Alexander walked ahead of her, loosening his tie as he spoke without turning around. "This is temporary. One night. In the morning you leave and we never speak again." Emily nodded, though her throat felt dry. She stood in the middle of the room while he disappeared into another hallway. She heard a door close, then silence. She sank onto the edge of a leather sofa, staring at the flickering flames. Her mind spun. She was alone in a stranger's home, a billionaire's fortress in the sky. She should have felt safe, but her pulse still rattled inside her chest. She thought about calling her mother, but her phone had died hours ago. Maybe that was for the best. She curled her fingers into her palms. Maybe this was just another transaction for him. Maybe tomorrow she would walk out of this glass tower and disappear into the city again, like none of this ever happened. But as she sat there, staring at the skyline beyond the glass, Emily felt the first sharp edge of a truth she had tried to deny. Nothing would ever be the same again. Emily did not know how long she sat there on the leather sofa, knees pulled close under her coat, eyes fixed on the city lights below the glass walls. She had never seen Manhattan like this before, spread out like a glittering ocean of promises she could never reach. Somewhere far away, the faint hum of traffic reminded her that normal people were still living their lives, going home from work, laughing with friends, going to sleep in warm beds they did not have to pay for with their dignity. The low crackle of the fireplace filled the silence around her but did nothing to quiet the noise inside her head. She thought of Ethan lying alone in that cold hospital room. She thought of her mother counting the money she had traded her for. She thought of Alexander Reed, the stranger who had walked into that filthy club and pulled her out like he was ordering a drink he did not plan to finish. She heard soft footsteps behind her and turned quickly. Alexander had changed. The suit jacket was gone. He wore a dark sweater now, sleeves pushed up just enough to reveal strong forearms. He held 2 glasses of water, one of which he set carefully on the table in front of her. "You should drink. You look like you might pass out." His voice was calm, detached, but his eyes flickered briefly over her face. Emily did not move to take the glass. She stared at it, then at him. "Why are you doing this?" she asked before she could stop herself. Her voice cracked in the middle, and she hated how small it sounded in this place. He sat down across from her, leaned back against the couch like a man used to owning every room he entered. "Doing what?" Buying me out of that place. You did not have to. You could have walked away." He was silent for a moment, studying her the way someone might examine a stray cat that refused to run from the cold. Finally he spoke, his tone even. "I do not like being in business with men like Mason Black. The club launders money through people like you. Girls who have no way out. I have been watching that place for weeks. You were not part of the plan tonight." Emily's throat tightened. "So I was just an inconvenience." He did not deny it. "You should drink the water." She reached for it with shaking fingers. The glass was heavier than she expected. She took a sip, felt it run cold and clean down her throat, then set it back before she spilled it all over herself. "What happens now?" she asked. Alexander's gaze did not waver. "Now you stay here tonight. In the morning I will have my driver take you home. That is all." Emily almost laughed, but there was no humor in the sound that escaped her mouth. Home. That word had not meant anything warm or safe in a very long time. She leaned back, hugging her knees tighter. "You paid double to get me out. What do you expect me to do in return?" He arched one brow, as if the answer should have been obvious. "Nothing you do not agree to." His voice dropped lower. "Did I force you to come with me? Did I force you to step into this elevator?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then shook her head. "No." "Then do not assume I will force you to do anything now." His words should have calmed her, but they did not. She had lived too long under threats wrapped in soft promises. Her mother's voice always came to mind. "This is for your own good. This is what you owe us. This is what a good daughter does." She swallowed hard, pressing her forehead against her knees. Alexander stood up and crossed to a sleek cabinet built into the far wall. He opened it, pulled out a thin blanket and brought it over. He did not drape it over her shoulders like she half expected. Instead, he placed it next to her on the couch, within easy reach. "You can sleep here or in the guest room down the hall. No one will come in, no one will touch you. I will be in my office." She looked up, searching his face for any sign of mockery. There was none. His eyes were tired but steady, dark and unreadable. She almost asked why he was being kind to her, but the words stuck in her throat. He turned away, disappearing down the hallway without another word. Emily sat there listening to his footsteps fade into silence. She waited for the fear to settle back into her bones, but something else crept in instead. A strange warmth that made her chest ache even more than her shame. She lay down on the couch, pulled the blanket over her legs, and stared at the ceiling until her eyes burned. Somewhere between the fireplace crackling and the hum of the city far below, exhaustion finally won. Emily woke hours later to the faint smell of coffee drifting through the open space. For a moment she forgot where she was. She sat up too quickly, the blanket slipping to the floor. The skyline outside the windows was soft blue now, the first hints of dawn creeping in. She heard soft voices down the hall, footsteps, the low click of a door opening. She found her shoes neatly placed by the coffee table. She slipped them on, feeling the cold floor against her bare ankles as she walked toward the sound. In a small, open kitchen space that looked more expensive than her entire apartment building, Alexander stood next to a woman Emily had never seen before. The woman was tall, older than Emily by maybe 10 years, dressed in a crisp black suit. She held a tablet and seemed unfazed by Emily's sudden appearance. Alexander glanced up, his expression unreadable. "You are awake. Good. Come here." She hesitated in the doorway. The woman gave her a polite nod. "This is Laura Brooks. She is my assistant." Laura's smile was brief but genuine. "Nice to meet you, Emily." She turned back to Alexander and handed him the tablet. "The file you requested. Also the transfer to Mason Black's account cleared. He will not bother you again." Alexander signed something on the screen, then looked at Emily. "Eat something. Laura will arrange a car to take you wherever you want to go." Emily stepped closer, noticing a fresh cup of coffee set near the marble counter. She stared at it, then at Alexander. "Why are you doing this? Why are you still here?" Alexander did not look up from the tablet. "I do not like loose ends." "You were about to become one." "No, you are not. You are free to leave." Emily felt her cheeks flush with something like anger, but softer around the edges. "Free?" The word tasted foreign on her tongue. She whispered, "And my mother? Will she stop?" Alexander's eyes met hers, sharp enough to cut through the cold morning light. "She will stop because she has no choice. Do you think she would dare come here again? Do you want her to?" Emily shook her head quickly, her throat closing up. "No." He closed the tablet and handed it back to Laura. "Take her wherever she wants to go. Make sure she gets there safely." Then he turned away as if she were just another problem filed under solved. Emily stood frozen by the counter, staring at the untouched coffee. She wanted to ask him something, anything, but she did not know what would make sense anymore. Laura touched her arm gently. "Come on, Emily. I will help you with your things." Emily followed, but halfway to the elevator she turned her head back. Alexander was already speaking into his phone, his back to her, a shadow against the city's skyline. Outside, the city had woken up. Taxis honked. Steam rose from the grates. People hurried past, bundled in coats and scarves. Emily hugged herself tighter as Laura guided her to a waiting car. Inside, the warmth felt false compared to the cold knot in her stomach. She pressed her fingers to the window, watching the buildings blur by as they left the tower behind. The ride back to her apartment was short but felt endless. She thought about everything she should feel: relief, anger, shame, gratitude, but they tangled together until she could not pull them apart. Laura spoke softly beside her, telling her about a contact number, about how she could reach out if Mason or anyone else tried to contact her again. Emily nodded, but she barely heard. When the car stopped, Laura handed her an envelope. It was heavy enough to make Emily's fingers tremble when she took it. "Alexander wanted you to have this." She tried to push it back, but Laura's hand stayed firm. "It is not a gift. Think of it as repayment for what he took last night. Take care of yourself, Emily. Do not waste it." Back in her tiny apartment, the first thing Emily did was plug in her dead phone. Her mother's messages flooded in, dozens of them, each one colder and sharper than the last. "Where are you? Did you get the rest? You owe us more. Ethan still needs that surgery. You think you are done? You are not done until I say so." Emily sank onto her bed, clutching the envelope to her chest. She thought of Alexander's eyes, steady and dark, the way he had said she was free. She wanted to believe him, But the world outside her window had not changed. The debt still weighed on her shoulders. Her mother's voice still echoed in her head, and somewhere downtown, a man who claimed he did not care had paid twice the price to take her away for one night. She wondered if he had already forgotten her name. 2 days passed before Emily heard anything about him again. She spent the first day locked in her room, ignoring every call from her mother and every knock on her door. She did not want to see anyone from her building, did not want them to see the heavy envelope hidden under her pillow. That money felt like it burned her fingers every time she touched it, yet she could not let it go. By the second morning, she forced herself out of bed, showered, put on her warmest coat, and walked to the hospital alone. Ethan lay in his small white room hooked up to beeping machines. His hair looked thinner than she remembered, his smile weaker, but still there when he saw her step in. He did not know where the money came from. He only knew she had always found ways to make things better for him, even when it hurt her to do it. She sat with him for hours, telling him about the snow that might come next week, about the music she was supposed to play at the winter recital, about anything except the truth. Nancy called twice while she was there, but Emily turned her phone face down. She knew exactly what her mother would say, how her voice would drip poison through the speaker. "You think you are done? You owe us more. Ethan still needs you. Do not be selfish." Emily almost believed her every time. When she stepped out of the hospital into the sharp wind, Laura Brooks was waiting near the curb. Emily stopped mid-step when she saw the familiar dark coat, the calm face that seemed to know every secret she was about to deny. "I thought you said you would not come here again." Emily's voice was hoarse but steady. Laura tucked her tablet under her arm. "Mr. Reed asked me to check on you." She gestured to a waiting car. "He needs to see you." Emily's stomach twisted. She shook her head. "I do not owe him anything else." Laura's eyes softened just a little. "Maybe not, but sometimes loose ends stay loose if you do not tie them up yourself." The ride downtown was silent. Emily did not touch the window this time. She kept her hands folded in her lap, staring at the blur of traffic. She half expected the car to take her back to that glass tower, but instead they stopped at a sleek office building surrounded by other steel and glass giants. Inside, she followed Laura through wide marble hallways, past polished elevators, and into an office bigger than her entire apartment. Alexander stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, his dark suit cutting a sharp line against the gray New York sky. He did not turn when she entered, but she felt the shift in the air when he knew she was there. "You should sit down." His voice was the same as she remembered, calm and final all at once. Emily stayed standing. "I do not want anything from you. I just want to go." Alexander's eyes narrowed slightly as he turned to face her. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes like he had not slept in days, and yet he was exactly the same, controlled, dangerous, untouchable. "You do not want anything from me." He repeated her words back slowly, tasting each one. "Then tell me, Emily, did you know your mother signed another contract?" Emily's knees almost buckled. She reached for the back of the chair but did not sit. "What contract?" He walked closer until he could see every lie written on her face. "Mason Black does not own you anymore, but your mother tried to sell you again. Different buyer, same price, this time for more. She promised your silence, promised you would do whatever the buyer asked." Emily shook her head, so hard her hair fell into her eyes. "That is not true. She would not." Alexander's laugh was soft but empty of humor. "You really want to believe that?" He picked up a thin file from his desk and tossed it onto the chair between them. "Read it." She did not want to touch it, but her fingers moved on their own. Inside was a photocopy of her mother's signature, the same loops and sharp slashes she had seen on every school permission slip growing up. Beneath it, a number that made her stomach turn. $200,000. She could not breathe. Her mother had sold her once for Ethan's surgery. Once was bad enough, but again? Without a word, her vision blurred. She felt Alexander's eyes on her, but she could not lift her head to meet them. What do you want me to do? Her voice cracked, but she forced the words out anyway. Do you want me to pay it back? I will find a way. I can get another job. I can... He cut her off. Do you really think this is about the money? His voice was suddenly sharp enough to make her flinch. You think you can solve this by handing back a check? Your mother does not care about the money. She will keep selling you until there is nothing left to sell. Emily swallowed hard. Her hands shook so badly she had to press them flat against the chair. Then what do you want? You paid for one night. You saved me once. What more do you want from me? Alexander stepped closer, close enough that she could see the lines at the corners of his eyes. I want you to stop acting like you owe that woman your life. You do not. She is poison, and if you go back to her, you will drown with her. Emily's breath came fast and shallow. She hated how close he stood, hated how the truth he spoke made something break open in her chest. She wanted to run, to hide, but his presence kept her pinned in place. I cannot just leave, Ethan. She whispered it like a confession. He needs me. Alexander's jaw tightened. And you think this is how you help him, by destroying yourself? She blinked fast, trying to hold back tears. If I do not, who will? Alexander said nothing for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and handed her another envelope. Inside was a document, heavy with legal words she barely understood. What is this? She asked. It is a petition to transfer full guardianship of your brother to you. The hospital bills will be paid under my foundation. Your mother will have no claim on you or Ethan. If she tries, she will answer to my lawyers. Emily stared at the page. She felt her lips form silent words she could not say out loud. Why would you do this? She asked finally, her voice raw. You do not even know me. Alexander's eyes softened just enough to make her chest ache. Maybe I should not care, but I do. He took a step back. Take it or leave it, but do not come crawling to me again when she drags you under. Emily clutched the envelope to her chest as Laura reappeared in the doorway. Alexander turned away, already focused on the skyline again, as if she were just another problem resolved. But this time she knew it was not that simple. Outside, the cold wind felt different on her skin. Laura walked her back to the car without saying much. As the city moved around them, Emily realized her world had shifted. Her mother's voice might still echo in her head, but Alexander's words cut through it now. She was not just someone's price tag. She did not have to drown with her mother's debts. Maybe she did not even have to be afraid. When she got home that night, Emily sat at her small desk under the flickering lamp, reading every line of the guardianship papers until the words blurred. She signed them with shaking hands. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, but for once, she felt like the story might finally belong to her. Emily thought signing those papers would bring her peace, but the silence that followed was heavier than she expected. For days, she waited for something to happen, half expecting her mother to bang on her door in the middle of the night, half dreading a message from Alexander saying he had changed his mind. Neither came. Instead, there was only the cold winter light slipping through her cheap apartment blinds each morning and the steady beep of Ethan's machines whenever she visited him at the hospital. She tried to go back to her classes at NYU, but every time she sat in the practice room with her violin in her lap, her fingers refused to move. Her music professor asked if she needed more time, more space, more help. She only shook her head. What she needed, no one at that school could give her. She needed to breathe without her mother's voice in her ear. She needed to believe that money did not own her anymore. One evening, when she stepped out of the hospital, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was Laura. Come to the Reed building tonight. You need to see this. She almost deleted it. She had no intention of standing in front of Alexander again, not after the last time she saw him, the way he had turned back to the glass windows as if she were just another unsolved equation. But something in Laura's tone made her hesitate. By the time she reached the tower, the city was a blur of headlights and cold mist. Inside, the security guards greeted her by name. She hated how normal that felt now, as if she belonged here. Laura met her in the lobby and guided her up the elevator without saying much. When the doors opened on the top floor, Emily heard the voices before she saw the people. Alexander stood at the end of a long conference table, sleeves rolled, eyes cold enough to freeze stone. Across from him sat Mason Black and a man she did not recognize. Older, heavier, a gold watch flashing on his wrist every time he shifted in his seat. The tension in the room was thick enough to choke her. Laura placed a steady hand on her back and whispered, "Stay behind me." Emily obeyed. She felt invisible in that bright room, but Alexander's eyes found her the moment she stepped in. He did not acknowledge her with words. He only looked once to see that she was there, and then turned his attention back to Mason. Mason tried to smile, but sweat glistened at his hairline. "Mr. Reed, we can work this out. There's no need for threats." Alexander's voice was low, cutting through Mason's words like a blade. "You tried to resell a girl I already paid to protect. You signed your own death warrant the moment you did that." The older man spoke up then, his tone oily. "Let's not be so dramatic. She's just a girl. She was paid. She knows how this works." Emily flinched. The man turned and his eyes raked over her like he was inspecting damaged goods. "She's not worth this much trouble, Mr. Reed. Let's be civil." Alexander's hand slammed against the table so suddenly that Emily jumped. "Say that again," he said, each word sharp, "and you will not walk out of this building alive." Mason's smile faltered completely. The older man shifted, his bravado cracking. "We were promised a replacement. It's just business." Emily felt Laura's hand tighten on her shoulder, as if to hold her back from running. But she did not run. She stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. "I am not a product. I am not for sale." For a second the room went dead silent. Mason's eyes darted to her, then back to Alexander, who did not look at her but spoke as if her words were a command he had waited to hear. "You heard her," Alexander said, his voice calm again but deadlier than before. "This ends tonight." He signaled to two men near the door guards she had not even noticed until now. They stepped forward, flanking Mason and the older man. "If I see your faces again in my city," Alexander said, "there will be no negotiations next time. Lara, draw up the papers. Their licenses, the club lease, the entire network. It all ends tonight." The older man spluttered, but Mason just sank in his seat, staring at the floor. Emily felt her pulse roar in her ears. Laura guided her away before she could hear any more. In Alexander's private office, the door clicked shut behind them. Emily stood frozen by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her reflection merging with the city lights. She did not know how to speak. She heard Alexander's footsteps, but did not turn. "Why?" she asked, her voice small. "Why do this? It's not your fight." Alexander poured himself a glass of water, but did not drink it. "It became my fight the moment you stepped into that club," he said simply. He moved closer, but not too close, as if giving her a choice to run if she wanted. "Do you really think I enjoy cleaning up other people's messes?" She turned then, anger flickering under her skin. "Then why keep doing it? Why not let them take me? You could have looked away." His eyes met hers, dark and tired, but burning with something she could not name. "Because I don't want to look away from you." Her breath caught in her throat. She wanted to tell him it was not that simple, that she was not worth all this. But the words died between them. She felt the fight drain from her bones. All she could do was whisper, "My mother will come back. She always does." Alexander set the untouched glass down with a soft click. "Not this time." He pulled a folder from his desk and held it out to her. "Read it." She took it with numb fingers. Inside were court documents, notarized signatures, her mother's name struck through in bold letters. "She has no claim," Alexander said. "You and your brother are free. No more contracts, no more threats. She will not see $1 more." Emily's eyes stung. "How?" was all she could manage. He shrugged once, an elegant gesture that looked out of place against the raw edge in his voice. Money can buy silence, and power makes people disappear if they test me. She hated how much relief spread through her chest. She hated how good it felt to believe him. And if she tries again? She asked softly. Alexander stepped closer, then close enough that she felt the warmth radiating off him. Then she deals with me, he said, each word a promise she did not dare question. She lowered her head. He reached out as if to touch her face, but stopped himself. His hand hovered, then fell away. Stay here tonight, he said, not because you owe me, because it is safer. Tomorrow you decide where you go. She wanted to argue, but the fight had left her. Okay, she whispered. But you don't have to, Emily, he said, cutting her off so gently it hurt. I know I don't have to. I want to. For once, she believed him. She slept that night in his penthouse again, but this time she did not curl up on the sofa. He gave her the guest room at the end of the hall, a soft bed she had never dreamed of lying in. She closed her eyes and let the exhaustion take her. Somewhere outside the city kept moving, but in that small, warm room, Emily felt the first true piece of freedom she had ever known. When she woke the next morning, the first thing she saw was the pale light spilling across the silk sheets. The second thing she saw was Alexander, leaning against the doorframe, sleeves rolled, coffee in hand. You sleep like someone who hasn't slept in years, he said when she stirred. Emily sat up slowly, her hair falling over her shoulder. She should have felt exposed, but she did not. I haven't, she said honestly. He stepped closer, handed her the mug. Drink, he said, and then come downstairs. There's something I want to show you. She took the coffee with both hands. Their fingers brushed. For a heartbeat, she did not feel like the girl from the club or the daughter sold for hospital bills. She felt like someone new, someone who might have a choice. Downstairs, Laura waited in the lounge, tablet in hand. Morning, Emily, she said, her smile real this time. We have good news. She turned the tablet around so Emily could see. The hospital board approved the transfer. Ethan's surgery is scheduled for next week, all costs covered. Emily's knees went weak. She sank into the nearest chair, pressing her hand over her mouth. You did this? She asked, looking at Alexander. He shook his head slowly. You did, he said. You chose to fight for him. I only made sure you didn't have to do it alone. For the first time, and as long as she could remember, Emily let herself cry without shame. She felt Alexander's hand rest on her shoulder, steady and warm. She knew then that she was not just bought. She was chosen. Emily spent the next few days moving between the hospital and Alexander's penthouse, like she was caught between two different worlds. One world was white walls and beeping monitors, the soft hum of machines that kept Ethan alive until the day of his surgery. The other was steel and glass and silence, broken only by the low murmur of Alexander's voice when he gave orders or spoke her name, like he was still trying to convince himself she was real. She kept waiting for it all to fall apart. She checked her phone constantly, expecting her mother to find another way to drag her back into the dirt. But every message was from Laura or the hospital, updates about Ethan's progress, reminders that she needed to rest too. Her mother's number went silent, blocked by more than just the phone's settings. She knew Alexander was behind that silence. One night, she found herself standing in his kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of his oversized shirts because she had no clothes left that fit. She watched him pour 2 glasses of water like it was the most ordinary thing in the world for a billionaire to do at midnight. He handed her one without a word and leaned against the counter, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. I can't stay here forever, she said, her voice low. The city lights glowed behind him through the tall windows. He watched her over the rim of his glass. I know. She hated how much it hurt to hear him agree. So what happens now? I'm free. Ethan will be okay. You don't owe me anything. He cut her off before she could finish. I never did it because I owed you. She set her glass down too hard, water sloshing over the side. Then why? Why keep me here? Why pay for everything? Why make this your problem? He pushed away from the counter and crossed to her, stopping close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him. He lifted a hand but did not touch her, fingers hovering near her cheek, like he was afraid he might break her if he did. "Because I didn't want to stop." She tried to hold his gaze, but it was too much. She looked down at the floor. "You bought me, Alexander. Maybe you didn't mean to, but you did. And now I don't know what this is supposed to be." He finally touched her then, his hand warm against her jaw. He tilted her face up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You think I want a transaction? Do you really believe that?" She wanted to say yes, because that would make it easier to leave when the time came, but the truth was right there in the way his thumb brushed her cheek, in the way his voice softened when he said her name like it meant something more than a price on a piece of paper. "I don't know what to believe," she whispered. His forehead rested against hers, so close she felt his breath when he spoke. "And believe this. I don't care about your past. I don't care what your mother did. I don't care what they think you're worth. You're mine because I chose you." Her breath caught. "And if I don't want to belong to anyone?" He smiled, just a flicker at the corner of his mouth. "Then don't. Stay anyway." It would have been so easy to give in right then, to let him take away the sharp edges of her fear and the ache in her chest. But Emily Carter had spent too long letting people decide who she was. She could not let herself be owned again, not even by a man who claimed he wanted nothing in return. She stepped back, his hand falling away. "I can't stay here forever," she said again, softer this time. "I need to find a place for me, not you, not my mother, not Ethan, just me." He did not argue. He just nodded once, like he had already expected this. "Then I'll help you find it." She opened her mouth to protest, but he raised a hand. "No arguments. I'm not locking you in a tower, Emily. I'm giving you the keys to the front door. What you do with them is your choice." She wanted to ask if he really meant it, if he would really let her walk away, but the truth was there in his eyes, steady and unflinching. She believed him. Maybe for the first time, she believed that someone could want her without wanting to own her. 2 days later, Ethan's surgery went exactly as planned. Emily sat beside his bed all night, listening to the slow, steady beep of the monitors, feeling the weight on her chest lift one shallow breath at a time. When she finally left the hospital, she did not go straight back to Alexander's penthouse. She went to a small cafe near her old campus, the one she used to sit in with her violin case at her feet and dreams too big for her pockets. She ordered black coffee and sat by the window, watching people hurry by in thick winter coats. Laura found her there an hour later, sliding into the seat across from her without asking. She looked tired but calm, her tablet resting on the table like an extension of her arm. "Running away?" Laura asked, her tone light but her eyes sharp. "Finding air," Emily said. She traced the rim of her mug with her finger. "I don't know who I am when I'm not a debt or a product or someone's burden." Laura's expression softened. "Maybe that's the point. You get to figure it out now." Emily looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "Why do you stay with him?" Laura's smile was small but warm. "Because he does what he says. That's rare in our world. And because someone has to watch him when he pretends he doesn't have a heart." Emily laughed, the sound small but real. "I think he's terrible at pretending." Laura's gaze flicked to the window. "He's waiting outside. He didn't want to come in. Said you'd come to him if you wanted to." Emily's chest tightened. She glanced at her reflection in the window. Wind-tousled hair, tired eyes, no makeup to hide the truth of who she was now. She pushed back her chair and stood. Outside, Alexander leaned against the hood of a sleek black car, his hands in his pockets, his eyes on the sidewalk like he was willing himself to be patient. When he saw her, something unspoken eased in his shoulders. She stopped a few feet away. "I'm not ready to be someone's anything yet." He nodded once. "Then be mine on your terms. Or be yours. Just don't disappear from me." She smiled, small and tired, but true. "No more contracts?" "No more contracts." His voice was quiet. No more buying, no more selling. Just you, just us, if you want that. She stepped closer until she could feel the warmth of him again. I want a chance to want that, she said. He lifted his hand, and this time, when he touched her cheek, she did not pull away. Take all the time you need, he said. I'll be here when you're ready. She leaned into his palm, closing her eyes as the cold wind whipped around them. For once, the world felt like it might finally belong to her, too. Spring came early that year, or maybe it just felt that way because for once Emily Carter did not wake up every morning with a weight pressing her chest shut. She moved out of the small apartment she used to hide in, the walls of that place still echoing her mother's voice even when the phone stopped ringing. She found a new place downtown, small but bright, with a window that faced the city skyline. She paid for it herself, using the money she made from tutoring music students and playing the violin at local galleries and private events. No more dark club rooms, no more papers to sign behind locked doors. Sometimes, when the day ended and the city glowed beneath her window, she still heard her doubts whisper in the quiet. She still wondered if she deserved all the chances she had now. But then she would see Ethan's text, a blurry selfie of him recovering, asking when she would visit again. Or she would get a call from the music director at NYU offering her a solo performance spot in the spring showcase, a place she thought she had lost forever. And some nights, when the wind rattled the windows just enough to remind her of how alone she used to feel, her door would buzz once, and she would find Alexander waiting on the other side. No tie, no polished lines, just him, the man who once pulled her out of a deal that was never hers to pay. They never put a name on what they were. Not yet. She still had too many things to rebuild on her own, and he knew that. He never pushed her to move into his penthouse again. He never asked her to sign anything. Some nights he would stand in her tiny kitchen, taller than the ceiling seemed to allow, and cook pasta for them both, while she sat on the counter, bare feet swinging, her laughter echoing off cheap tile and cracked paint. It was not glamorous, but it was hers. The freedom, the choice, the softness of letting someone care for her without a price hidden in the fine print. One evening, as they sat by her window with the city stretched out below them, Alexander rested his hand over hers. No diamond ring, no contract, just warm skin and steady breath. She turned to look at him, the man who had once seemed like a myth, untouchable behind glass towers and spotless suits. Now he was just Alexander, still sharp when he needed to be, but softer at the edges when he looked at her. He squeezed her hand gently. You know, the first night I saw you, I thought I was doing you a favor, he said. She laughed under her breath, leaning her head on his shoulder. And now? She asked. He kissed her temple, his voice low against her hair. Now I know it was you who saved me from myself. Outside, the city buzzed with 1,000 stories, some darker than hers, some brighter, all tangled together in streets and towers and neon signs. She would never forget where she came from or what she survived. But she also knew one truth, that no one could sell again. She was not for sale. Not anymore. She was free to choose who to love, who to trust, and how to forgive herself for ever believing she was worth only what someone else was willing to pay. As the lights of New York blurred into a soft sea of gold and white beyond the glass, Emily closed her eyes, listening to the quiet sound of Alexander's heartbeat under her cheek. She was not his possession. She was not her mother's victim. She was her own story now. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to believe that sometimes love does not save you by buying you. It saves you by setting you free to stay. True love does not come with a price tag. It comes with a promise. If you do not want to be owned, no one can ever sell you again.